What's up, Goon Squad? It's your boy back again, Jody MF Keith, aka Nola Gold, here with Mavness. Freddie Blue, what's up, baby? You ready for these patch notes? I got a mute partner on these patch notes. Please bear with me. Well, we got you back. All right, patch notes 1.5. Before we get into the notes, what do you expect from these patch notes? People have been talking about it. It's been all over Reddit and Twitter and all over the place. What do you think needed to be changed in these patch notes before we get into them?
I think Will of Ionia is probably one of the biggest offenders. And I think it's the one that a lot of people do not automatically think of, see anything like that when they take a look at it, right? But when you think about the way that the game is designed and that you can bank mana, so when you have 3 mana banked, anytime in the mid to late game, and I'll put this in Magic terms, right, which I'm sure you can much better translate over to LOR, it feels like a time walk. It feels like, um, any deck that plays a mid to late game, you're just getting a free turn. You just have to underdrop by one at that point, right? And in
Yeah.
certain decks like Heimer, which is any of the PNZ Ionia decks, that is huge. I can go turn 7, I can go on turn 6, play a Heimer and Will of Ionia something, or all the way around and then set up for money. And they're tapped out pretty much. And that's just, I think that's something that needed to be changed.
Too much tempo advantage, especially paired with the tempo you get off of getting the free turret from Heimer or the targeting that you get with Ezreal. Yeah, that makes sense. I can see that. I knew that PNZ. I'm not a game designer, okay? I know you went to school for game design and you're more informed on how it works. I'm just a player. They say don't hate the player, hate the game. Well, I'm just a player, okay? So if we're hating on the game here, I'm a player in the game, and I would say that PNZ, there's something wrong there, right? I can't put my finger on it exactly. I think one thing that would be a cool swap, and again, I don't have any game design background, so be sure to flame me in the comments, is that maybe you could take that elusive turret and make it the 4-drop one with 4 power, and then make the 3-drop one the fearsome one. That would just make more sense to me because
when you can go Heimerdinger into flash, it's pretty much a game.
Right, and let us not forget in the beta, whenever they nerf Flash in the first place, because most people don't, newer players, they might not know, Flash used to create a spell of any cost. Now it guarantees that it costs 6 or more, but before you could flash into another cheap spell and just flood the board right off the rip. Now, I mean, granted, most of the 6-drops in those combinations are not bad, but, get a True Shot Barrage or a Lee Sin Kick or something like that. But the card has already been nerfed, so the combination needs to be nerfed a little bit more because on my last win to hit Masters, I actually was like, screw it, I'm just going to play Heimer for these last couple wins. And on the last one, I had Heimer with double flash, and it just didn't even feel like my opponent. It didn't matter what my opponent was doing. If I wasn't dead by turn 5, then they were going to die. So I expect that there would be some big nerfs to Heimer Vi. And then also, I think it should be something that overlaps with Ezreal Karma, because at least for tournament play recently, Ezreal Karma has been all over the place. So I think Will of Ionia might be a place to look at. The tempo advantage is huge, but especially paired with Vimer, which is already generating a lot of tempo. And Heimer, the combination of the two just could be too egregious that something needs to change. So we'll get into it.
I think a lot of the spell stuff needs to be changed, right? But before you get into it real quick, I think that's probably the biggest problem with the Heimer, the PNZ and Ionia stuff, right? When you really think about it in their synergies, even with Ezreal, right, and Karma especially, right? Some of these things just because you can bank spell mana and because these decks play around spells as like their combo pieces or finishers, right? Flash of Brilliance maybe costing 4 and then replenishing the replenishing the spellbank mana. Okay, sure, because now you're still losing 1 mana every time you do it, right? Maybe that's an answer, right? But
Okay, yeah.
I think that's just like aside from just fixing Heimerdinger's turrets,
Turret.
right? Because all we're gonna do when we do that is now make it where Heimer's not as popular, but Karma Ezreal is. It's still the same faction. You have 2 different decks that
Right.
dominate this game from those 2 factions, right? It doesn't matter how you pair them, right?
I
Whether it's
agree.
Heimer or Karma Ezreal, right? They're both very so when you look at that, you start to ask yourself, what's the common denominator there? The common denominator there are spells and spell mana. And I think that's something that people haven't really realized. I don't want to say that the design team hasn't realized, because I definitely think that Steve Rubin and Andrew Yip and them are great at what they do. They're very intelligent, right? They're some of the smartest guys I've ever met. But that being said, like to the rest of the world out there, in case they're wondering why or what really needs to be changed, because I've seen some debates out there, etc. I think that's really what it focuses on: the spells, with being able to bank spell mana every single time you want to, or whenever you want to, and playing the deck a certain way. It's just so powerful, and you need to not make it where people are getting immense free value from that, I guess, essentially. And that's what's happening now. Flash of Brilliance is so strong, and yet it's the one that gives Heimer its biggest turret, its best turret, right? Not its biggest, sorry, it's its best turret, right? And I think that's a huge problem. Same goes for Ezreal.
Well,
There's
I think calling Heimer's elusive turret the best turret, which is obviously true, really goes more into the issue of elusive as a mechanic in Legends Runeterra. And I think it's an issue that isn't going to be addressed by a patch, decreasing the toughness on some elusives or the power and just changing stat numbers. I think fundamentally it's a mechanic that just needs to have some more counterplay to it. And I went into this on a podcast recently, the Weekly Puro Report. I went in depth on how Magic keywords like reach from Magic, which allows a creature without flying to block flying, which flying is their version of elusive, is sorely needed, I think, in this game. And I don't know if that's just a cheap answer to it. Again, I'm not in game design, but I wouldn't be surprised if we saw some mechanic like that would take future releases to address.
Yeah. I think I brought this up yesterday to some people where and people are gonna probably laugh at this, right? But Ghost, for instance, right, which gives a unit elusive.
Yeah.
What faction is that right now?
Ionia.
Now, why are we already giving the faction that has a bunch of elusive stuff the ability to make more elusives, right? When in actuality, when you think about League of Legends and where this game was designed from, right? Why are spells like that not universal? Why haven't they ever come out with that yet?
Oh, that's a good idea. Would it have like summoner spells, like basically a neutral region? A
Yeah, and
neutral
they
region?
do very specific things, right? So like I think giving it a unit elusive for one is fine. I think, or maybe it needs to be more, and I'm not going to delve too much into that, right? Of how powerful it would be and whatever, because there's no way to know. We haven't tested it. We haven't whatever, right? But obviously putting out a Ledros and then giving him Ghost probably wins the game, right? But so I'm not going to say that like that wouldn't be too broken. That's another conversation. But to have Ghost be now all of a sudden a neutral thing that anybody can use from any faction, right? Because that's how it is in League of Legends.
Excuse
Bless
me.
you.
Not it. Not it.
Now I wonder, like, some decks now have the option and the ability to create options in their deck to combat certain things that are just too prevalent right now, right? And I get it. That may suck for some deck builders that, I have to, put this in or bring this in for this matchup or, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But like, that's what deck building is. That's what metagaming is. It's just the way that it is, right?
Right.
I don't understand why Ghost is for Ionia only. I don't.
That's a good example. And the idea of adding a region, non-region locked cast of cards to the game, I don't think is a terrible idea. I've seen it in Hearthstone before. They actually have the neutral cards, and in Magic, there's like artifacts and colorless things that can be played across many different colors. And I don't know if they're resisting it or if the idea has even been brought up. So hopefully, Riot Umbridge sees this, and I'm sure they've already taken that into consideration. And at some point, it'll be added, I think, to the game. It makes sense, especially if we're talking about adding cards that are good, like a heal card that is playable. Because whenever we get a burn format, whenever it gives them more, I think it would be more freeing from a game design perspective. And again, I don't know shit about game design, but my assumption is that it'll open up some more design space for more radical cards of burn persuasion. Because you can hate burn, like remember the last season. It was like burn everywhere. Everybody's like burn, burn, burn. And we saw it, handled with some nerfs. Now it still exists in some fashion, but the accessibility of heal is just not there for every region. And if you did have that possibility, then when a meta goes awry, there will be some. It would be nice to have some neutral tools to add to any deck.
Yeah, like I said, they would have to be
good idea.
Specific type cards, right? They would have to be very so that they're not overpowered themselves and just going in every single
deck, right? So it's a hard thing to to make, but I think it would be a good tool. All right, that's a good idea. All right, so let's take the head of the patch notes here. We're just getting into them for the first time. The Season of Fortune continues with patch 1.5 and introduction of labs. Great, labs are here. A new game mode that's all about variety, experimentation, and maybe a little chaos. We've also got a few quality of life improvements and even a few balance changes. Okay, patch 1.5 contains a couple balance changes that were originally slated for 1.6 as part of our usual monthly balance cadence. While we're not going to start making balance updates every patch, we saw an opportunity to quickly turn around a few key changes and get them in your hands, and in the process develop more flexibility around when and how we update cards. Yeah, so this patch was not supposed to be a balance patch. It was an emergency balance patch, as it's been dubbed on Twitter and other social media platforms. And there's been a lot of speculation as to why this is necessary. And we've seen a lot of different takes. Some people say it's nothing but aggro and control. Mid-range decks can't make it. I've seen that as a popular take, which I have disagreed with on the Weekly Pro Report. Even before I saw that take, my take is just fundamentally against that. But we can all agree that PNZ Ionia is a problem. The region combination needs some kind of nerf, but how to do it. And we covered that at the beginning of this video. As we covered in our Season of Fortune introduction starting in August, we'll introduce new cards to LOR every 2 months, which means we will also need to update how we think about and approach balance over the life of the set. We're still considering how exactly what will adjust, but look for more information in our eventual preview for next season. We also want to stay flexible with how we give players insight into what we're currently working on, things like the watch list section and some editions of the patch notes or the epic card experiences we asked for on Twitter prior to patch 1.4. This time we'd actually like to provide a brief preview of what we're planning for patch 1.6. Okay, so in a game design perspective, I like that. First of all, I like that Riot is so forthcoming. Like Umbridge was on the Twin Sun podcast and was talking the other day, and then also now they expressed their intent at the beginning of the patch notes, which I do love because it's like, all right, these are the reasons, and you see this across many games. But what do you think about their reasoning on like how they want the game? Like they've expressly advocated for every card having a place in the game or having a place in a deck in the game, and there's not a lot of dead cards for that reason. That's a big goal, I think, to try and maintain. But as far as patching goes, the set releases every 2 weeks, and I know this isn't part of this specific patch, but you have to look at everything in context, I believe, and giving you the context of where Riot wants their game to go, where Legends of Runeterra is slated to exist and differentiate itself from other card games. I really do like the direction. If you want to touch on that at all, Freddie.
Well, let me
Madness.
first start off by saying this, right? I think, and this is probably part of my frustration, and I'll get into a little bit of a rant on this, but I think that the LOR design team, or the LOR team in general, is probably one of the best teams I have seen in my 20 plus years of playing card games, right? I thought Versus System had a pretty good team. I thought World of Warcraft, the original trading card game, before it got dumbed down into Hearthstone, had a pretty good team as well. Which some of these people come from, right? Andrew Yip comes from that whole upper deck pedigree. Um, so, like, definitely, I definitely feel like they have an amazing team when it comes to that stuff. And the best in the business, which is why I've been a little bit annoyed with everybody complaining so much about some of these cards and what's going on, right? I feel as though like people are complaining just to complain, and it's probably because they haven't had many other experiences in other card games, right? I think they're doing a great
Yeah.
job, but that also is going to feed into like my problem with this patch right now. I feel like they fixed certain cards here that are not the problem at all in the current meta, and they just did it because people complained about it. And I'm very disappointed in that, to be honest. There's only two actual fixes in this whole thing, and one of them is to a card that, like, I get it, it's a feel bad experience, but I just don't see how it's even relevant in the sense that, like, when you look at win rates and things like that, it's not at the top.
All right, well let's get into them. Let's get into them, and we'll see. Let's finish the rest of their mission statement. We'll get to the cards.
But going, I guess, to your original question, I think they're a great team. I think they're doing a great job. I think that like they clearly have their ear to the ground, and I think that they've designed one of the best games I've played in a very long time.
Nice. Whoops. I agree. We also want to stay flexible with how we give players insight into what we are currently working on. Things like the watch list. Yeah, we covered that. Okay, cool. Updates we're currently working on include adjustments to some of Heimerdinger's associated cards, his bots. Ooh, that was my prediction. Reworking discard units to increase their satisfaction and usability. Discard units? Are we talking about like Brash Gambler, Delver, or whatever it is, the 4-3 for 2 that you have to pitch one? Is that what they're talking about?
They're probably talking about that,
units?
and even Get Excited, and like even though Get Excited is probably too strong, it wasn't like that.
Yeah,
but
they say units, so I'm assuming things that have to discard when you play them. They probably need some kind of reward.
Yeah, so if it's units, I would have to say the Brash Fam. I would have to say all those other things because like they're not being played as much right now, right? Probably for good reason. And they probably wanted to see a different type of strategy or meta evolve from it, right? Because it does open up different avenues.
Yeah, and like plus they changed the way that they've opened the door and shown themselves to be open to the idea of just changing the way mechanics work fundamentally. Whenever they changed in the last patch, the plunder, steal, what we call yoink, the boomers of the NAB mechanic, right? And you know, so that they're obviously willing to change the way things work in the game and at a fast pace, which I think keeps the meta fresh. Like if we talk about the complaints about this meta, they arose very quickly in a week. And to be honest with you, you don't even see a cycle of a meta in a week. I mean, if you play a lot of games, obviously the compound amount of games and data that they have amongst everybody, yes. But I just don't get how somebody could have a personal experience and an opinion that isn't based emotionally, because we want to stay away from, games, entertainment, you obviously want to apply to the emotions of your players, but then realistically, when you start changing policy, like by changing these cards and the way things work, it should be done rationally. Okay? And so we see the outrage coming out in a week, and I've seen a lot of great memes. Love the meme making out there. on Reddit. I've really embraced the LOR Reddit community. There's some great memes on there. And I've actually been starting to make a meme a day, every day. I got a command in my Twitch chat, and I'll post them up in the IQ Discord, our team GG IQ Discord, as well as my own personal Discord, because memes are great. But this is just a little, yeah, I'll just be watching for the memes. But anyway, the memes about this just go to show that people don't think that this is the way that you can't have a take on that small sample size. So the data might be there, and if you're referencing data, because there's some scientists in this game that really make great posts and break down all the data, yes, but for people to just be like, oh, this sucks because XYZ, or this needs to be banned, in a week's time, I mean, I come from a Magic background, and so do you, you come from all the games, but I'm most known from a Magic experience. And, in Magic, they come out with a set like every 3 months, and then the bans happen once in between there. So it's a month and a half. So whenever we talk about a patch coming every 2 weeks, and then the balance patch is supposed to be every month, and then new set every 2 months, then that's a lot of turnover naturally. And so a meta doesn't even really have full time to evolve, because I think one crucial part of a meta that never really exists in Legends or Runeterra, as I've seen so far, is the full circle. The full circle, madness? Like you play a meta, and the meta will start out, and it'll be this mid-range deck that's crushing or the aggro decks at the beginning are always killing it, because people haven't figured out the mid-range decks, or the mana's bad, or things like that. And you turn that around into a control deck eating the mid-range, and then finally you got the aggro deck at the tail end of a format just coming out of left field, and it's like, oh, we've come full circle. And there's not enough time for that meta to ever reach that final stage in the way I'm seeing it, and it always stagnates in the control mirror part, and then new cards come out, and then it's like back to aggro, because I don't even see people playing aggro right now. Like, people were talking about burn and elusives, and maybe it's just where I'm at on the ladder, but like I said, I can't make an informed opinion and say, oh, well, burn's not that bad, because I never play against it. So it's not really fair, and I don't think anybody could actually have an experienced opinion from playing. Yeah, you play so many games. I played against a lot of Darrowing on the ladder, yes, and so it's all just my own experience, and not really what can be evidenced into. It could be a piece of evidence, and obviously, if I'm feeling bad about something, then I should definitely say it, because a preponderance of evidence can obviously force them to make a move. But individual takes are that individual takes, in my opinion, anyway. So and metas don't evolve as they evolve fast because of how many games are out there, but we don't get the full amount of time to actually explore the possibilities and how to attack what we perceive as problems. And I think that in some cases things should run their course. And I think the P&Z experiment has been has been fulfilled already, to the point that I think that that's definitely something that needs to change. And possibly it's Will of Ionia. I can't make that case. I do understand the arguments, and I know how powerful the card is and why. I just don't know that that's the thing that needs to be attacked. But yeah, I don't know. That's just my thoughts on it.
Yeah, I to touch base on that, I think that like a good example of all that is actually I think a good example of all of that is we can go back to Magic, right? I think that like Magic obviously is the granddaddy of them all. There's a reason why we compare a lot to Magic or even Hearthstone, etc., because they've been around for so long. They're a juggernaut. When you think about like the meta in those games, um, there's a hive mind there. And the reason there's a hive mind is because a lot is played on Magic Online, and they already have tournaments. There's now a lot being done on Arena, etc. But because the game has been out for so long, there are places where content is being created at a very high level, right? And your average everyday casual player is able to go and look somewhere to see where is the best place or for the meta currently, right? Right now, the only place anybody has any of that on is a stream, which is why we're seeing the hive mind or the herd mentality. Yoink is so bad, or this is so bad, because a Mogwai hates it, a Swimstream hates it, or whatever, right? And like these metas are not solved by any means, right? And I think a good indicator of that is look at the tournaments. Look at how the tournaments will have different decks, right? Now, granted, in a 2-deck no-ban format, obviously Ionia PNZ has been the most played deck, and rightfully so, and that's a different design problem. But these metas have not been there, right? And like Burn, I haven't seen Burn. I think people play Burn on ladder, and the reason why people complain is because people with Burn gets played on ladder because it's fast, right? Ladder is not a competitive thing. When you look at ladder, it's a chore. It's a time sink. That's all it is, and it's a time sink to give you some form of feeling on. It's a time sink to give you a feeling on some sort of accomplishment, right? But it is just a time sink. So when you think about it, I think somebody had broken down the numbers about a little over a month ago, where like you could play a slower deck and have
Yeah,
like a
it was.
60 or 70% win rate,
Yeah, it was
and
swim.
still not make it. Yeah, and still, but like if you have a 55% win rate on a burn deck because of the amount, and like you're just gonna get
Yeah, you're gonna hit
infinite more
masses
game to
way
play.
faster.
Yeah,
Yeah,
way
you're.
faster.
Yeah, you just gotta win
And
one more game than you lose. Like,
but that's the reason why you're going to see that, right? We see that in Magic too. On Arena, let's be real. Mono red is so huge
oh
every
yeah,
single time, right?
definitely.
It's not like it's no secret. Mono red is humongous. There is no secret to it. Mono red is huge, and it's because of that.
It's
But
it's
like,
it's
look at
more
the
of a
Pro Tour.
system problem than it
Yeah,
is. Like if you look at it, like you said, if you reference the tournaments, like Jam Fest had a big tournament this past weekend, and you know the results showed. Obviously, PNZ because the format for that event was 2-deck no ban. PNZ was in every lineup. I know I played against. There was a few, and one I think one deck out of the top 16 didn't play a PNZ Ionia deck, and it was double aggro, which just argues the existence and the greatness of PNZ Ionia because you need a double aggro lineup to try and validate your opponent's PNZ. Good meta choice. And every round I played there was a PNZ Ionia deck every single time. And I played one myself. I'm not even going to say that I'm not part of the problem, but it's there. And it's a systematic problem. So in the future, I think obviously we get into tournaments in another time. You know what? I think we should probably just start a podcast. What do y'all think, chat? In the comments below. I think me and Mavis should just start a podcast because we could go on and on forever. We're just trying to talk about patch notes today. But really, I think the point of this whole conversation is to give you context. And I like that about the patch notes to give you context behind everything because it's not black and white like a lot of people think it is black and white. I posted a good meme the other day. And basically, if somebody says it and they're popular, then everybody's just going to repeat it, even though they thought something else ahead of time when they thought for themselves. So, as far as that goes, I think tournament scene is a complete different thing from the ladder, and not to invalidate ladder successes. Definitely, if you're climbing the ladder, you should be proud of that. But you just got to know it's something different than the tournament. And so different people value different things. And it's funny because I feel that tournaments, especially with banned format, have been less victims to the PNZ Ionian menace because there's the ban option. So if you don't want to tailor your decks to fighting it, then, and it kind of insulates from design mistakes. Not to say it's a huge mistake, but it has gone on too long. You know, I like things existing and us trying them. Like I played PNZ Ionia for the first time in a tournament in a long time this past weekend because I knew that they were going to have to address it and I wanted to experience it so I could see what it was like exactly because you don't know something until you really experience it. So I think people just aren't getting enough experience. They aren't really, at least to be as, outspoken as they are. And maybe I'm not experiencing because I don't play the ladder as much as I play. I mean, I hit Masters every time, but outside of that, I don't push it or grind it that hard because I see it like you see it, Freddie, for what it is. It's just a grind. So
yeah, it's a big grind. It's a big time sink. It's
I did it
once
before.
again, not to, like you said, not to invalidate anybody playing ladder, right? I think that everybody should be super proud of like what they do and accomplish on ladder. Not everyone's a tournament player, and let's be real, these are third-party tournaments being ran. Like these are not official Riot tournaments yet. There is no esports or organized play yet. Riot hasn't
Well,
even developed their organized play program yet. So I can understand people feeling like, mainly they want to, play ladder, and that's what the game
Yeah, this is
is
what
supposed to
Riot is
whatever.
sanctioned as the competitive
Yeah.
pinnacle of the
So,
game.
and I can understand that totally. Right? But I think that, like, once again, the main reason that we're having some of the issues that we're having, and it's kind of a mob mentality kind of thing. The vocal minority who has big platforms are, inciting these sort of, like, I don't want to say wrong ideas of the meta, but just like, you know, they don't like a
Well,
certain particular thing because that's what their
yeah.
content is based on.
Well,
Right? That's what
and,
their
and, and
thing.
it's not just one issue either because I've been active a lot in the Reddit lately, trying to be more part of the community so that, I could be more in tune with it as a content producer in the game. It's good for me to be active in the community. And, I have found different threads on everything. It's elusives. No, it's the nav mechanic. Oh, no, it's PNZ Ionia. No, it's Will of Ionia. No, and everybody has their own, right? Oh, it's Darius. Just play dumb guys and win the game. And, the power level of the cards, no synergy. I've heard it all. And everybody has their own gripe. And that's the thing. And so I don't think it's as clear cut, which is why I think patch notes are very exciting because we'll see what the developers think.
Yeah, for sure. And
Well, it's
I
the
guess
good
let's move on.
news. Let's talk
Let's
about the
keep
good
trucking.
news here. We got new mode labs, man. Did you enjoy the gauntlet? Let's talk about the last one they had because the gauntlet was the big thing on the last patch. We had the singleton gauntlet. Did you get your 7 wins or you slack?
So I'm going to be honest with everybody here, right? I didn't even play it once. Unfortunately, I'm the man who like does a lot of behind the scenes with IQ. Even though I am a competitive player, even though I have played Magic and other games professionally, I will be returning hopefully to competitive play very very shortly and being able to play a lot more. But because some of these things are time sinks or whatever, it gets a little hard for me. I am a little upset that I didn't get to play it. I know some people were just like, "Oh, this singleton looks awful." Like some casual players, folks, whatever. That thing looked fun as hell because I love diversity. I love whatever. And obviously, as a Magic player, I love Limit, right? And like Limit is very singleton, right? Or some EDH
Explain limited.
players.
Limited is
Well,
what
like
like
chat,
expedition,
what we
expedition.
would have here is expedition. It's a little different in Magic because you're doing it with 8 other players and you're pulling cards from each other's packs. So you're actually drafting against one another, right? Kind of like think of it more like fantasy football, right? Rather than here where expedition is you're just going to get a certain set of cards, and if you can pick up the pattern, you'll be on a good way to whatever. But obviously in those kind of things, you're not going to get 3 or 4 of a card. It's not going to And if you do, and they're broken cards, well, hey, I guess you're going to run that you're going to run that pod, right?
Very good. Yeah.
But I guess I regret not being able to play it. I am definitely going to play this labs mode. I just was really busy last week with that, and also picking up my daughter from New York, so I didn't get a chance to play it at all, which was a little bit. I took it for granted, I guess, and I'm a little disappointed in
Yeah.
myself for that.
Okay. Well, there'll be more gauntlets, and they're going to return the singleton gauntlet in the future. Personally, I got 6 wins with a viewer submitted Demacia aggro deck, and then ended up with my 7th win on the next go round with a self-crafted deep deck. I went singleton deep, bro. That deck was wild. And, one
Singleton
Nautilus.
deep. What?
One Maokai. I played a Callista. The way that the idea came from an opponent I played on the ladder who was playing deep post nerf on, with a sacrifice, like an aristocrat style, support to it. It's pretty interesting. They were obviously heavy on the glimpse, and then they also played caretaker. And, kind of interesting, really, whenever you pair it with like Maokai, because obviously Maokai levels off of your units dying. So interesting take. And I went ahead and just said, well, we're missing half of the deep deck when we have to do singleton. Why don't we make the other half with that same theme? Because it seemed decently successful from my opponent. And so when I constructed deck, and that was one example of taking a constructed deck and using it in a limited build format. So yeah, it was fun though because you'd have some crazy games. Like think about it, one Ladros, you already got Atrocity in the deep deck. You got just throw a Ladros in there, and then you can play Brew Awakening because it can stabilize a board instead of since you can't play a second Grasp or a second Whale or something like that. but like they effectively do similar things. And then since you're going for the One of Each champion, you still get these high rolls with like Callista and Elise, because like Elise is still good early pressure, and it also gives you more game against Ionia and stuff when you have early pressure like that compared to being total top end. So the games were wildly different. So I thought the format was cool because obviously you're playing a singleton format, so the interactions and the play patterns are going to be different every time, and especially when you're grinding trying to get 7 wins to get that sweet badge, you definitely run into some very interesting games. Both, your deck being different, being played different, or the cards coming up different, but then also your opponent's reaction to those cards, because they don't always have the Mystic Shot for your Lucian on turn 2. Things like that. So you get to see more cards show more, they get to flex a little bit more, where in a 3-of meta, you just, they'll get shut down by 3-of, like I said, Mystic Shot or Get Excited or whatever. 3-of Will of Ionia, since we're speaking, on Will of Ionia, that, you won't see these mid-game cards like Hecarim and things like that just really shine like you do in Singleton. So I think that format was really fun. You're going to have a different one on the next go-round, but this is a whole new way of playing Labs. The Gauntlet has been added. The first week was just regular format, and then the second was Singleton. And I'm not sure what the next one is, but now we have the first lab, which is ARAM, A-R-A-M, is available in patch 1.5 and features unexpected champion matchups and unpredictable outcomes. Rather than building a deck, you'll make choices from a random selection of champions. When the game starts, the champions you choose will start in your hand and generate a deck for you to pilot against your opponent's equally random creation. Does that sound sweet or what?
Nice.
Yeah, we don't have to worry about deck building. That's cool. So it's going to be very accessible. It's going to be, as if we needed more accessibility to the most free-to-play card game there is. There's another mode where you don't need to own any cards and you get to play. So that's going to be cool. I imagine you'll be able to gain experience off of that. The new mode for labs, Break the Game. Science requires bold innovations. Go wild with the first experimental mode from Heimerdinger's laboratory, ARAM. Random champions, accelerated games, and unpredictable outcomes. You can't get action like this anywhere else in Runeterra. Every patch after 1.5 will include a new or updated lab to replace the previous one. Some labs will experiment with small changes to the classic LOR formula, while others will offer new game modes or even more extreme takes on card play in the world of Runeterra. Each one is a chance for you to join us as we try new things and discover what's fun, what's not, and what deserves to be developed further in the future. We're starting small, but look forward to some bigger, crazier experiments later this year and beyond. So yeah, that's similar. I forget the game mode in Hearthstone. The Tavern Brawl. Every week there was a Tavern Brawl, and I thought those were pretty fun. And I played them even after I stopped playing Hearthstone because they're always like wild. So I'm like different ideas. Like, okay, we'll do 100 life starting total, and we're giving you the deck, or like you start with 10 mana, things like that. So could be exciting. Your deck's all spells, things like that. Could be sweet. Nice for a little downtime.
I enjoy formats like this because it really showcases skill rather than because there is RNG, right? I get it. Some people don't like RNG and whatever, and they think that it will choke in a game, but no, there's plenty of times that a decision that you made clearly even would have knocked the percentages off of whatever RNG possibly could have happened, right? Whatever variance had hit. So I think it's a pretty cool game mode, and I'm actually pretty excited for it. I definitely want to play it.
Nice. Me too. Okay, card updates. This is what y'all were really waiting for. I guess we should put a timestamp in this on a YouTube video if you want to go right to card updates. Card updates, Pilfered Goods. Okay, this is the one people were talking about. The NAV mechanic moved up to 3 men, it looks like. Is this the one you thought was going to happen?
Yeah, unfortunately, this is definitely the one I thought was going to happen. And, I'm not really impressed, excited, or anything about this. Don't get me wrong. I think the yoink or the NAV mechanic or whatever you want to call it definitely has a negative play experience at times to it, especially when they pull a broken, super broken card from you, right?
Yeah.
I get that.
I do. Look, I'm the Kick-Axe player, and when they steal my Concussive Palm or Will of Ionia in a deck that can't cast that card, and it's the one card that can blow you out, it's like the worst. Crushing.
Yeah. So for me, it's definitely. I knew this was coming, I guess, on some level, but this is one of the cards that like, I truly feel wasn't even meant to be touched, or maybe it needed to be touched, but I don't think this is what's the problem with the men at all. I think
I
this
don't,
is exactly what I was talking about before with the mob mentality. I think this is what's wrong with some of the streamers that their living or their livelihood depend on like creating really good content, streaming every single day, and trying new and exciting things for the viewer. And I think that's awesome. But when you
yeah,
have that dictating design, uh, that really deters me from this game, and like makes me feel like I'm a little scared of the direction that the game's going to go in.
which is why I prefaced every statement I said earlier about I'm not a game designer. You know what I do? I play games for you guys. And yeah, I have some insight but I'm the mouse in the laboratory. You know, I'm not the scientist here. And so like, yeah, I can give you as much experience and data and add to it as I can, but I can't tell you what the right thing to do is. Now, I'll tell you one thing though. Even though this wasn't the hot topic of debate, I do think that, in my experience, the plunder mechanic is too easy, especially with warning shot, Yordle Grifter, making warning shot, and generally undercosted units, and the way Make It Rain is always going to hit them in the first few turns. That it's really hard to prevent your opponent from actually having plunder for a substantial amount of time, even if you're playing a control deck. And so this card is always going to be with plunder. It's just a matter of time, right? So I think that given that being the case, I mean, how often is a Pilfer Goods cast without plunder? So not very often. Desperate times only. And so even a Riptide Rex, think about the plunder on that. It's an 8-mana spell, and they always seem to find a way to have the plunder for it. And it's so easily maintained with the existence of Warning Shot. So let's just go in and look at this card and just say 2-mana nab 2, right? And nab 2 is draw 2. And aside from, even though it's a random draw from your opponent's deck, I mean, we're assuming if we're playing competitively that our opponent has good cards in their deck. So, like, yeah, it adds some variance and diversity to the way the rest of the game is going to play, which people, have issue with. I don't think that's the issue that I have with it. The only thing that I had with it is that it's 2-mana draw 2, which is just going to be real good. I mean, if you look at a comparative card, Glimpse, at least you have to sacrifice something. So you have to have some kind of synergy in, the units that you play with things dying to really, like, get advantage off of this. Where this, I mean, the front end cost of plunder is arguably 0 in most cases. So I don't think 2-mana draw 2 is what you want, and like moving this up to a divination tier if you're coming from Magic, 3-mana draw 2 just makes more sense. But like you said, Madness, it's not the it's not really the issue that I think that needed to be addressed. Let's see what they got else for us right here. So I'll
Yeah,
tell you now.
I agree though on just on the general level that 2 mana draw 2 cards is a little OP. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
I get the whole, but I've never heard anybody. I guess to clarify my position, I have never heard anyone use that as the reason why they don't like the card. Everyone doesn't like the card because they're getting beat by the cards.
No, you're right. I've
And
never heard that either. That was, if there's such a thing as existing an original thought, is one that I just had.
yeah, I've never heard anybody talk about, and I think we've sort of discussed it previously, but I've never heard anybody talk about that it's just 2 mana, draw 2 cards, that's just two, whatever, right? I think
Yeah.
a Magic player will definitely approach it from that way.
Well, let's
And the
see.
thing that,
Let's see if that's the way they approached it right here. We measure the overall success of mechanics in individual cards through a number of lenses, including balance, promotion of skill, gameplay variation, and net fun for both players. While NAB creates variety, test adaptability, and is a core component to several Bojwater decks. I like that they address test adaptability. That's similar to what we were just saying about this the singleton format. That's one thing I liked about the singleton gauntlet was that it tests adaptability because the board states are always crazy. And I think Expedition does that too. And I really don't like that. I played Expedition on my FTP EU account yesterday, and the general consensus of most of my viewers and like a lot of players is that Expedition isn't worth playing. And, that's unfortunate because it's such a great thing, like limited in Magic, as you touched on earlier, is a great thing. Also, in my coaching, it is one of the most skill gaining formats that you can play is a limited because of that exactly. See, I'm not a game designer, so I don't know that term. Test adaptability. That's very important. I like that. And is a core component to Bottled Water decks. It can also be frustrating when players are seeing it all the time due to its power level. Basically, we think NAB is too common, and it'll be healthier for LOR if it's a bit less of a top competitive mechanic for Bottled Water. Okay, with that in mind, we're reducing the efficiency of the most draw-heavy NAB card. Our goal is to retain Pilfered Goods potential in dedicated archetypes like Draw, Synergy, Plunder, and Allegiance, while making it less generically and widely powerful. We're also continuing to keep a close eye on NAB and listen to your feedback, and we'll make further changes as necessary. Okay, so they did say it was too common, and so increasing... Because, like, who's not going to play 2-mana draw 2? I mean, you're going to work that into your control deck, dude. Look at the Karma Ezreal decks. You know, they got it. That's a control deck.
Look at any of the TF decks, right?
Yeah, I
think that's what they were hoping for this whole time. That was what it would be, and it didn't turn out to be that way.
Right, it's just too powerful on a overall card game level. That 2-mana draw 2 is just something. I mean, what's the most busted card in Magic? Blue 1-mana draw 3. You know, this is like obviously only draw 2, but I'm thinking about Knight's Whisper, man. Draw 2, lose 2 life. That one's played in Vintage right now. So, you know, I mean, for the Magic analysis, sorry y'all, LOR, we were breaking our bonds from from that slowly. But basically, 2-mana draw 2 in a card game is too efficient, and yeah, so that was a good nerf, and they did touch on that as well in their explanation. So they get it. They get it. Maybe I get it. maybe I got a thing for this game design thing. But anyway, so yeah, okay. So what's the all right, Solitary Monk. That one's in the Vimer deck. Not seen in Karma Ezreal all that often. Hardly at all, actually, right? I haven't seen this in a Karma Ezreal deck in a month, I think. Have you?
No. It's in Vimer, maybe. That's about it.
Okay. Solitary Monks. It's also in the Burn deck, too. It's like a house in that Burn deck. Because they could damage their Crimson Disciples.
Oh, yeah, that Nox Elusives list that everybody keeps saying is S tier, but yeah,
they say it's S tier. Now, some cool lines of play with that, though, that have been interesting, was using the Solitary Monk to recall your Imperial Demolitionist and your Crimson Disciple, which is already damaged, which is pretty cool, along with being a 4-power threat. Well, now it looks like it's 3 power. What is that going to do for this card, and what does it do for the Vimer strategy?
I don't think it does anything, to be honest. I don't. So far, everything I've seen from this patch, I don't think addressed any of the underlying issues at all in the game.
Well, is this all we got? Because it looks like you already read ahead. This is my first time going here. Yeah, these are the only 2 changes. Okay,
that's it. Those are the only 2 changes. That's
what they gave us. Solitary Monk.
And I'm pretty. You know, the rest are expedition stuff. And this is pretty disappointing to me because once again, I don't see the NAB mechanic being the top decks, right? We keep talking about Ionia PNZ. We keep talking about Burn. We keep talking about all of these things. But we don't ever talk about the NAB mechanic, ever. So, once again, it just feels like it's a feel-bad experience that has been created by mob mentality from top streamers. Because
yeah, the Pilfered Goods. Well, they even touch on it as like a future warning. Like, we're still looking at this NAB mechanic. And like... I don't think the mechanic's bad. I like that they unnerfed Freyord by making it grab from the bottom. I do like that part of it because that was the problem that I had with it before. And yeah, I'm just afraid, but I'm a Freyord fanboy, so I identify my bias there. So maybe I was wrong
was
then.
So weak for so long, right? You know what I mean? Like it was just so weak.
Yeah,
it was weak.
Now it's insane. Now it's like I think it's Ionia, right, and then it's Freyord. And then it's B and Z. Call me crazy. Because the standalones of Sejuani, the standalone of Braum now, like those are just independently powerful champions. And like unnerfing the top deck pump obviously hasn't been taken advantage of the most right now. But that was important, I think, for the NAB mechanic and the biggest gripe against it, in my opinion. Some people went so far. It's funny because there's a lot of commentary on every issue, and some people thought that changing the nav mechanic to grabbing from the bottom instead of the top was actually a nerf to the nav mechanic, because, or was a buff to the nav mechanic, because now your opponent isn't closer to drawing their champions. That was an interesting take I saw. Have you seen that one? Have you heard that one?
Say that again, I'm sorry?
Okay, you remember how Nab would take the top card? And so the one reprieve that your opponent being stolen from had was that they're closer to drawing champs because the Nab mechanic can't draw a champ?
Yeah.
They were saying that since it grabs from the bottom now, that it actually buffed the Nab mechanic further. Which seems like a stretch to me. Because now your opponent isn't closer to drawing champions because you stole from them, whereas before they were. You know, because like if you stole 3 cards off the top of your deck, it was closer. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I think obviously that
like to say that's a buff to the nab mechanic, to the pilfered goods, or to the black market merchant is a bit of a stretch, in my opinion. And it just seems like it would come from a place of people just being mad because, you know, they got their ruination. They got the ruination stolen.
Yeah,
and they couldn't play around the ruination. Yeah.
I really think that people just do not like the mechanic at all. And it has made it where this is what we have to deal with. Which has been sort of disappointing to me, to be honest with you.
Yeah. And so now with Solitary Monk going down to a 3/3, I don't think it will see as much play, except for whenever it's got nice synergies with bouncing your things. Maybe not as a 3-of, especially, but I think it was very good rate. If that's the first thing you play and you're not hindered by having to replay something you played before it, that couldn't take advantage of the recall, 3 mana 4/3 ends the game in 5 attacks. Now, I mean, you pair that with P and Z on any level or Noxious, then you have a serious problem, because it can easily go with any protection 3 attacks in. And being elusive, an issue we dropped earlier, it's a clean 12 damage. Finding the rest of the 8 is not hard when cards like Decimate and Get Excited exist, right? So I think this is a good nerf, but I don't think it solves the overall issue, like you said, of PNZ Ionia, that combination. Because like we said, this isn't even in the Ezreal Karma deck, which obviously the Karma nerf of 1 mana cost more didn't really stop that deck from dominating all the tournaments lately. So, and this card's not included in that deck. So, there's more that y'all need to do. Actually, you didn't do anything. Let's just say it. You didn't do anything. Well, you already said it 3 times, Madness. So I'm with you on that one. They didn't do anything to address the problem of PNZ Ionia, and yeah, this like nerfed a version of aggro, and like if even like elusives, like traditional elusives with Freljord, doesn't play this in multiples, if any at all. Maybe the most efficient list might play it, but, you can get along fine without it. So, you're not addressing an elusive issue here. It's just an individual card power level. Like, this card is very powerful. I've played it, obviously probably won't play it much in the future, but, if you remember that standalone, Demacia Ionia deck.
And that's kind of why they nerfed standalone.
And they nerfed standalone for that. And so, but this was there just as one of the best 3-drops. That deck was just like all the best 3-drops that you could play with standalone, so you could bank the first 2 turns, play a ballin' ass 3-drop, and then standalone it in the same turn. And now you have a ballin' ass 3-drop, because standalone was given 6 worth of stats, +3/+3, which is the value of 3 regular mana. Think about it. 3 mana gets you a 3/3 with a small ability. Generally, it used to get you 2/3s, but they finally figured out that they should buff it. Think a la the Trapper, which is going to give you a cheap Yeti, or if we think about what's saw a resurgence since its buff, the Tavern Keeper, which heals 3 whenever you play it. And so, like, +3/+3 in stats is worth 3 mana on its own, and then you topple that on top of it costing spell mana instead of unit mana, like generic mana. So, that card they had to nerf. But the Solitary Monk was amongst those 3-drops in that deck, just the best 3-drops. So this is one. And so now it's less that. And, I guess we'll have to see it synergize more, promote more synergy, and maybe games will last longer. Wasn't that a big complaint also? Was that the meta is aggro and control, and now that the Braum is here and this Anivia thing, and so games are lasting longer. It seems like like what that was the point, right? And so if that's the point, what do either of these balance patches address to that concern? Because it seems like games would be slower when you decrease the power level of Solitary Monk, and then you increase the cost of the card advantage engine, one of the card advantage engines. So it doesn't seem like that's going to promote.
I think the major
faster
concern
games.
with that, by the way, when people talk about that, is that there's been studies, right, where a game that lasts or takes 7 minutes is active. A lot of people play this on mobile or Hearthstone or other games like that on mobile, and generally speaking, 7 minutes is like the sweet spot, right, of people's attention span, things of that nature. And I know that this was brought up recently in Magic too. The problem in Magic, though, is that Magic is fundamentally designed as a sideboard game with best of 3. So that just can't happen in that type of experience.
Yeah.
This game was never designed like that.
Yeah,
So
I think sideboarding is cumbersome, and I'm glad it's not in this game.
Yeah, so I think that, like, obviously, like, to say that, a game now takes 12 or 14 minutes because of how in-depth some of the strategy is, well, if you don't have 15 minutes for a game, I'm sorry, like, what are you expecting? Like, if you're looking to play some sort of blitzy type game, there's chess. It's more solve, it's more whatever, and you can play blitz all you want, or maybe bring that that type of dynamic here. But I feel like trying to worry about if you can keep a game within a certain type of time frame, that limits your play design and like how you're going to create your game and do your things going forward. I didn't understand that point, and I hope that wasn't what they were trying to do. But I can't imagine that. That just seems like a moot point, right? A moot point.
All right,
let's
wrap this up. Quick look at the expedition, because we're hitting the hour mark. Expedition archetypes. They do this every week. I'm not going to go into each one, but whenever you do expeditions, it's nice because they kind of tell you what your strategy is going to be based off of the pile at the top, whether it's Ancient Evil, Battle Scars, Fishbones, and those actually evolve into constructed decks, and it basically points out synergies. So every patch they generally take cards out or add things or change the frequency. And so this is pretty much what this section of patch notes is. So if you're really into Expedition, which I find a lot of people aren't right now, this is a section for you. Also, the Vault unlock timing. Starting with this patch, we're updating Vault unlock timing to put it more safely after our patch timing. So Vault Day is getting moved, y'all. Vault unlock time moved from Tuesday to Thursday at 8 a.m. local time based on Shard. This week's Vault duration extended to 9 days to make the transition. So I opened a Vault today, so I guess that's going to be next Thursday we're going to get the Vault unlock, or are we getting a bonus 2-day Vault? Not sure. Miscellaneous Quest UI updated and moved to a side panel. Cool. Background of matchmaking queue and versus screen now determined by the board equipped in your loadout. So loadouts are getting more shine. So if you got a sick loadout, then that's good for you. 60-second cooldown added to certain between card VO interactions so they aren't so repetitively heard when playing multiple copies of the same cards. Affected units will now play their standard summon VO until the cooldown resets. Okay, that's cool. Some bug fixes, and that's pretty much it. So, yeah, what did y'all think? I'd love to hear in the comments. You got anything you want to close us out with, Madness? I started with a ghost partner, and I ended with a ghost partner. Well, thanks for tuning in. If you watch this on YouTube, make sure you check me out live. If you're looking for gameplay, join the IQ Discord for future tournaments and coaching and strategy tips, as well as following us on Twitter to be in tune with all the content. All details down below. Remember, always, one love, good vibes, everybody. Y'all stay world champions.